Welcome back. All right, so based on some comments that I've seen over the last 24 hours, I will say there are those who do not believe in the Yzerplan, those who may have and don't now, or maybe those who just never did. But at any rate, the Detroit Red Wings, I think, have done a good job so far, and I'm saying that because this is a team that had the cap space to add these guys for the money that they did, whether it's Hall, whether it's Comfer, and of course, next summer we should see the salary cap go up by a bunch, right? That's what we're banking on. I think that's what a lot of GMs are banking on. So some of these contracts we're looking at and saying, what are they thinking? They're banking on them aging well, right? And so we've seen instances where that does happen and instances where it doesn't. We'll see what happens with Yzerman. Now, currently, Detroit has almost $10 million in cap space, $9,894,444. And the only restricted free agent they have left to sign is Veleno. So that's not going to eat into that by very much. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say Detroit's not done yet. July the 1st is just the beginning of what's going to happen this summer. Steve Yzerman's going to have a lot of plans, I would think, going forward to continue to improve the team. Now, I don't care about who's going to be on what line. That's not important for this video. What's important is looking at each position and saying, all right, so how are they? How are they going to look? Now, this is a team that finished 24th in goals for last year and 23rd in goals against. So they didn't have a great offense or great defense by the end of the year. It is also important to point out that in terms of points percentage, 16-17 was the first year that they were outside of the playoffs. They had a 482 points percentage. The next year it dropped to 445. Came up to 451. Bottomed out in 2019-2020 at 275. Came back up to 429, 451. The season before the one we just finished, and the season we just finished, 488 points percentage. So the best points percentage they've had in a long time. But I understand there are some Wings fans that might be getting frustrating just how long they've been outside of the playoffs. They were 13-7-5 on December 7th of this past season, and they lost 5 in a row to finish the season. So that 488 probably should be above 500, but they sold at the deadline. Things bottomed out after the deadline, and that's kind of what happens. You do see some teams put up some ugly numbers after that. So looking at their left side, and this is where I wanted to point this out because I think people are forgetting there's some really good prospects here who should be coming up and playing a prominent role. So you got Kubalik. He's in the final year of his contract, so the black asterisk means final year of contract. The light blue asterisk means new face to the squad. Fabry, Rasmussen, who can also play center. Costin's been added. Gettinger, Fisher also added. Fisher, it's a 1-year contract, right? So out of this left side here, you also have Soderblom. Soderblom projects as a really good forward in the NHL. It's going to be this year. If it's going to be this year, there's moves to be made. Because Kubalik's going to play. Rasmussen should play, right? Kostin, they don't sign him for $2 million, so he won't play. And you've got Christian Fischer. So that's a pretty good left side, and if Soderblom's going to get in, you're going to have to make a little bit of room. Fabry, to me, is one that, and I know he gets injured a lot. I do wonder if Fabry ends up being the odd man out, if they end up moving him somehow, right? Then you got down the middle. Larkin is still projected to be the number one center. He's got more support in Comfer. Comfer, of course, with a lot of experience. He's also able to play right wing. It is his first year in Detroit. We'll see how it goes. Andrew Kopp didn't have a fantastic first run with Detroit, but he was very good by the end of the year. And a third line spot, I think, is better for Kopp anyways, right? So Kopp can play any of the forward positions, which is important. He could move up. He could move down wherever he is in the lineup, right? Joe Veleno, probably still fourth line. However, Marco Kasper's got to play. So one thing to keep in mind here is that Kasper could potentially make this roster, end up being that number 2 center. Comfer could bump down to 3. Kopp moves over to the wing, and all of a sudden you've got all kinds of depth. So part of what's going to decide how good Detroit is this year is going to be their young guys, right? There's also Zarnik, who's on a final year of his contract. Danielson I've gotten red because Nate Danielson, A, isn't signed to a contract, and B, probably not going to be in the NHL in year 1 of his contract. But there's some good depth down the middle, and in Kasper and Danielson, that depth is for the future as well. Now, on the right side, you've got David Perron. He's the only forward who's projected to be in their regular lineup this year who's over the age of 30. Now, on the blue line and in goal, they have players who are 30 or older. But up front, they're younger, and this is a league where it just seems to keep getting younger. Younger usually means faster as well, right? So, You've got Perron. You've also got Raymond, who's going to be looking to bounce back from a bit of a down year. Zadina is an interesting one because Sprong's been added on the right side, and Berggren needs to play. Berggren played really, really well. Luff also had some games. He's on the final year of a contract, too. So I do wonder if Zadina's the odd man out for the Wings on the right-hand side. It's possible he's not, but again, you need depth because of injuries and whatnot. But there's some really good depth up front. So I don't expect them to be 24th in goals for. And a lot of what happens is going to depend on what does Soderblom do? What does Casper do? Does Berggren take that next step? Does Raymond bounce back? That's a lot of good, talented young forwards right there. Then you get to the blue line, and I will admit, it's a little dodgy in places. On the left side, at least the projected left side, yes, defensemen do play on their opposite side at times, a right-handed defenseman on the left and whatnot. Wallman has played well. Sherratt, mixed bag that first year in Detroit. And Mata, right? So you've got, three on the left there with a good amount of experience. And Wallman, I think, still has some untapped upside. And then there's Edvinsson. Edvinsson's got to play. So maybe Mata's the guy who's out of the lineup. Maybe it's Sherratt. Because when you look at the right side, you got Moritz Seider. Well, he's not coming out of the lineup. You got Justin Hall. And you've got Gostisbehere. And now you've got Lindstrom as one of the extras as well. They drafted Sandin Pellikka, who's a right side defenseman. Sabrango is there on the left. And I know Sabrango, there's some debate about his upside. I think Sabrango, if he can play half as well as he did at the World Juniors, I think he's an NHL defenseman. And then you got Willander there as well. So there's a lot of depth here. There's some good prospects. I do wonder if maybe you take somebody who's a right-handed defenseman, move him over to the left, or something along those lines at some point. But this is a solid blue line. I think that Detroit, if Edvinsson is as advertised this year, and if he can stay healthy, this is a team that should be better. Gostisbehere is a power play quarterback. Justin Hall, his numbers came down in Toronto this past year. But again, if he can bounce back, I don't think anybody's going to be mad about his cap hit. Because again, they have lots of cap space for this year. So they can afford to give more money to Hall. They can afford to give more money to Comfort than another team would, thus attracting them to Detroit, making their lineup a little bit better, and they still have the cap space to add others. And with contracts that are coming off the books, they should be fine next summer because the salary cap's going up as well. So in goal, it's gonna be sad if something happens and the salary cap doesn't end up going up, and then all these videos from now and before, people are gonna be going to the comments. Cap didn't go up. What happened? So yeah, the goaltending is going to be an interesting one. You've got Husso, you've got Reimer. That's your tandem. Husso's still got 2 years left in his deal. Lyon, of course, added as well. And so, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. I didn't put the light blue next to Reimer. I also didn't with Rafferty. Brogan Rafferty's been added for depth. He'll play in the AHL, right? But Lyon is there as insurance. He showed in Florida what he could do this year. Casa is still there. He's developing, and now they've drafted Augustine. And again, as I've said, I don't have a problem with having two blue chip prospects in net. So having both Casa and Augustine, who both project to become NHL goaltenders, is good, because that means that by the time Husso's contract is up, one or the other should be ready to come in. And it's very likely going to be Casa, right? I think this is a good squad that Detroit's got put together. I think it'll be better than the 488 points percentage they had last year. Playoffs? Maybe. And really with Detroit, with how they've played over the last, 7 years, I think the fact that we're looking at a team that should be able to make the playoffs, at the very least, should make a run at the playoffs, I think it bodes well for the future. I think with Yzerman, I think there's I'm not sure why all the criticism comes in for the Hall deal and the Comfort deal, because again, as I said, they have the cap space to make it work. I do think sometimes we just look at the table of who got what and we say, oh, that's way too much, not taking into consideration which teams have the cap space to spend a little bit extra on a couple of players. And not only that, but Comfort comes over from Colorado, so I mean, it's possible he might help them get another member of the Avs when their time's up. And with a guy like Hall coming out of Toronto, he's coming out of a pressure cooker. He will be under less pressure in Detroit. That may help his game as well. So I am still a believer in the Yzerplan. Absolutely. I understand the wavering about the Shannon plan in Toronto, but I do still believe in the Yzerplan in Detroit. But this is where the rubber has to meet the road. It's the second year for Derek Lalonde, who did a very good job in year one. And they've added enough good, solid players that I think they're going to stay in every game and they should be able to win their share and maybe get themselves into a playoff spot. So the question I have is, so with this cap space that's left over, do you keep it if you're Yzerman, or do you use it and go out and get other players? What do you expect to happen? Because to me, there's too many forwards here. It feels like something else is going to happen with Detroit. We might see a trade. They also have a lot of defensemen here that if Edvinsson's going to get in the lineup, if Lindstrom is going to play some games here. And Lindstrom, there's no offensive upside, but he's very good defensively. What do they do? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Easy for me to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.